We've finally made it. This is it. The finale. King Ohger is now over. And this is a show that definitely overall delivered. But did they stick that landing? It's here that we break things down into what happened this week. Since this is the end of the show, we must also talk about the show overall and where it averages. But first, what happened this week? We start things off with the Kings finally getting their epic talk down to Dugdead, with Gira sporting a copy pasta background. See that guy? You can see him again there, and there. Ooh, that's a lot. The main five go ahead and handle Dugdead. Wow, surprise hand cameo from Raculus' secret gives Kofuki the sugar necessary to nail down the key for immortality. At least what the container for it is. But the real fight starts here. Kamajin with the well-deserved ass beating from Jeremy, just for Raculus to finally get in some of those well-deserved licks in, putting the impact right where it matters. Oh, that's not enough for y'all? Because it's definitely not enough for me. So here's Deathnarak channeling his own Fangs of Defiance, splitting him 9 ways from Sunday and dragging him through the gates of death. All this while Dugdead is getting the smackdown, but I think they forgot their place because they are just specs. So let's get him growing bigly just in time for everyone to inform the others about the container for immortality. How do they actually get immortality? Why, none other than a massive Genki Dama! Or I guess folks, spirit energy. So here we go, final battle! Beam spams and green screen clipping galore. I can't tell what's suitmation and CG from all the clipping going on here. However, all seems bleak as Dugdead smashing the King Ohger right into the fourth wall. But that's his limit. He only works within the universal confines of his room and this universe. But the Kings are fueled by the lives on that one tiny speck in that one room, which is all the power they need to have the Shoe Gods act on their own, sacrificing their mortal shells piece by piece until shattering the walls that bind them, knocking Dugdead down to being a speck and finally aiming for the little guy in his head. And thus, the battle is finally over. But them Shoe Gods are gone, but not forgotten. Because Yama got them souls and Gira already had one. So he just gotta cook up some new bodies. In the epilogue, the world has come to unifying as one. And although they could go with just being the Kingdom of Chikyu, they all clusterfuck their kingdoms into one singular name that makes no damn sense. Unless each kingdom gets the middle section. With the boundaries no longer confined, everyone can freely interact. The cultural divide is free for all to enjoy as they choose to. Even the prisoners get the warm embrace of Mofun to keep warm. But who's out here warming up Raculus but Suzume? Of course. However, all threats are not done yet, as Jeremy prepares for yet one other adventure to catalog. Though unseen, everyone is prepped up for this, but until then, that is one story that ends as another begins. Rating time! So look, I'll be honest, this episode barely stuck the landing from me. The previous episode was definitely vastly superior to what we ended up getting here. But the episode itself still had moments that had me kind of satisfied yet unsatisfied with certain results. As such, this episode, standalone, will be getting the Bioman Beam! Listen, that final fight just wasn't shit. And maybe folks got recency bias, especially since we haven't had the King Ohger properly fight in a massive amount of way in months. But need I remind you of episode 2's King Ohger fight? Because that shit was fire as fuck. That shit was hype as shit. More hype than whatever we got this week. Now, with the emphasis on the king symbol again last week, at least towards the end of things, the short fight that we had with DugDead on the ground didn't showcase any of this off at all, and it should have. This should have been the moment to actually give us a payoff to those kingly symbols and what those abilities were. You'd think that they would be using all these sort of elemental strikes on him, but nah. Instead, the best fight in the whole episode was actually just Kamajan getting his chest caved in by Jeremy, Raculus, and then Deathnarak, just for him to get dragged to the gates of the dead. And we get a nice little Grody cameo. Great. Vidalia makes a not really appearance that gives us the solution to their immortality jewel solution. A spirit bomb contained within the husk of a giant shoe god soul shell. Okay, but then there's the fight with the massive King Oger just being in DugDead's playroom, which just is Visually, it is a lot more misses than hits, and I was hoping that the lack of King Oger CG the last half a year would have had them cooking for this finale. Look, like I said, King Oger just had better fights in the first half. The Shoe Gods burning their bodies in an effort to take down DugDead had no emotional toll on me. Once again, it's because the second half of the show rarely had the Shoe Gods do anything. Out of the Shoe Gods, the only real character relationships that we got was Kuwagan with Gira, Scorpy with Himeno, and I guess the love triangle with her, Hopper, and Kabuton. Now, had the Kings actually had a proper relationship with their Shoe Gods, it would have made the moment just much more impactful. Like I mentioned before, DugDead is technically their creator and original master, and that whole plot point that could have been a thing in the show just wasn't. Past Sentai series did a good job of linking their mecha personality-wise with their corresponding ranger, and this season had the potential for it, but just never did it. So, look, losing them just didn't do much for me. Also, Tarantula Knight was like one of the first ones to get burned off, so how did Jeremy's cockpit stay intact? Now we do know that Yama is gonna bring them back, so how about you give them some new bodies so y'all can get some new toys? The epilogue showing a unified world which the cultures had no more uniformity was a nice touch. Jeremy does tease that there is more to come while laying down his Venomix, which kind of hints more at the crossovers coming up. But there was nothing in particular of a wow factor that hit me when it came to this conclusion. But now, it's time for the actual series review to see where it stands amongst them all. Now, as far as overall series goes, King Oger was actually split into two separate parts, with the first part dealing with the world building, the legend of the King Oger, building up the teams and countries, not just against the Bugnarok, but also against Raculus and his own plans and motivations. Episode 1 started things off with a massive potential of an A rank, and the train continued as the rest of Gira's origins arc followed with the scorings of Episode 2 with an S, 3 with an A, then 4 with a B, and 5 with an S+. Then came the start of the next arc, building up the confrontation with Raculus and the foundation of the team that went with Episode 6, starting off with an A, 7 with a B, 8 with an S+, 9 with a B as well, and then 10 with another S+. They really know how to wrap up these arcs. The next arc introduced us to Jeremy as we get his globe-trotting adventures as to how he fits within the mold of the current worldview while shattering it with his own legend, while Gira pretends to be dead. This pops things off with Episode 11 being an S, 12 with an S+, 13 another S, and then 14 drops down to a B, and 15 an A. The next set of episodes had Raculus finally making his moves, while the mystery of the Fury of the Gods gets a little bit more expounding on. We get another duel between Gira and Raculus that finally ends him for good, with Episode 16 getting an S, 17 an A, 18 gets a B, 19 got a C, and 20 another B. The final stretch of the first part began with a recap episode that ended things up with a B, while the rest of the episodes gave us the lead up to King Caucasus Castle with the epic teamwork of the kingdom, Deathnorax Tragedy, and finally, everyone is here with God King Oger. This gave us episode 22 at a B, 23 with an S, 24 with an S+, and 25 and 26 getting both the Suzume and Tsunoni double S rank. Thus, averaging all of those scores together gives us part 1 ending with a massive A rank. It's good. It's really good. Really, really amazing. So, as part 1 ends, we gotta take things to part 2 that has a 2-year time skip with the introduction of Dugdead and taking things cosmic. This starts things off with episode 27 getting a double S rank as well. Episode 28 of King Oger is the body swap episode, and it's still my favorite episode of the bunch, getting the only triple S rating. Then as we go down the lines, we got B, B, A, 32 and 33 are a package deal with the Kyoryuger crossover, and both of those together end up being an S+ ranking. 34 kicks things up a notch by giving us Raculus's return, but still ended up with an A rating. Then as we go down the line, we've got A, B, B, B. Damn, we're really swimming in B's. How are we going to change that up? Well, of course, episode 40 was the first ever Dynaman D. But then we come back up with episode 41's S rank. And then down the line, we go A, C, B, D. Then we get to episode 47, a rating that was so controversial on my end apparently that it started making the circles in other communities unbeknownst to me. And that was my first ever F rank. And you know what? I stick by it. That episode just wasn't it. Leaving us with the final 3 episodes of the show at a C, double S, and this episode with a B, giving us the average of part 2 being a B rank. There are more flaws narratively and presentation-wise with part 2 than there was with part 1. Part 1 is definitely the superior outing when it comes to this show. It just flowed better. The C's were paid off in spades. There was a good balance of style, substance, stakes, and satire. There was just a lot of meat to dig your teeth into and really lived up to the name King Oger. While part 2, though starting off amazing, really sat on its own hands. The titular Robo took a major backseat. The villains of the previous part continued finding their way into being the villains again. Backstory bits from the first part got further expanded on or retconned, and usually not in a good way. There's a lot more episodes that I would probably tell people to skip with part 2, while with part 1 I would say that it's all essential viewing. Minus the one recap episode. That overall says a lot in terms of how this show itself flowed. Though the second half is not bad by any stretch of a mile, part 1 really is deserving of the name Peak Oger, while part 2 is really just King Hooger? Now, how would I rank the characters of the show? Well, let's start from the bottom to the top. And here, we start with Rita. Though, I will say that a lot of Western social media definitely praises Rita's inclusion into the team. Fundamentally, Rita was the least developed character in the roster. There are character-focused episodes focused more on others than themselves. And as much as folks enjoyed the Idol episode, nothing really happened. Really a largely wasted potential there, especially since there was the whole cooking up of the Ice Eye powers and their knack for using it. But once we came to find out that it was just another kingly power that the others also ended up having their own, that kind of just went out the window. Though the series started off with a focus on Gira, there was a good balance of characterization just there. The Tyrant King bit was played off very early on, with tidbits sprinkled here and there, But overall, I wouldn't say that he comes anywhere near my top regs. And as we got to know more about Gira, a lot of the character just went out the window as we learned more about his nature and his abilities. Nothing ever really manifested itself in a way that I thought would really make the character just stand out much. And they really could have done more with his whole semblance with Kuwagon, but they just didn't really play that up. A lot of the talk in the Shoe Gods aspect really was wasted, but the majority of it was more utilized in the first half than it was in the second half. Himeno had a lot of character moments to focus on, especially since she suffered from the Reiwa parent issue syndrome. But her dynamic with various characters actually did bring a shine to her. There are multiple layers of complexity with her wanting everything beautiful while being at the peak of medicine, style, and elegance. This was further explored with her retainer Sebastian as having one of the better dynamics in their relationship. Jeremy was a fantastic introduction to a character, taking things figuratively to failing to see the literal things right in front of him. The first half of the show told us his story and his rise to kinghood as a proper character progression, but then part 2 came out and gave us so many false starts to arcs. Kingdom? Destroyed at the start, taking the blame and painting himself as a villain, which was great, only for the next episode to just kind of forget that all that happened and just have him chilling in his hidey hole. A lot of what made the character great in the first half just kind of brushed aside in the second, as even his own retainer kind of just disappeared off screen for a long period of time. Daboski ended up becoming one of my favorite characters in the show, as you can never really get a handle around to what he was scheming at any point in time. He kept me on edge in terms of what his true intentions were, as this is not just a key factor in part 1, but in part 2 as well. Still keeping contact with Raculus and still relying on intelligence from his sister. Of course, his end goal was always for the betterment of Tofu and his people. His backstory with Lady Hiroki further grew my love for this character, and his origins are a complete 180 from how he had to adapt once he became the highest power in his land. Now, it's no secret, especially if you've been keeping up with my live streams, that Yanma is that guy. Overall, my favorite character in the show, with retainers to match. He's got that cool guy nerd approach that still doesn't shy away from being shy. The moment that they had to show his crush on Himeno on screen was just great, and the visual gags he plays up to a T. Really, a lot of it were key highlights in a lot of episodes. Most Yanma episodes ended up being the highest rated episodes from my viewing. In the show, he faced the most backlash, at first from Raculus driving him near death if it weren't for Gira showing up, and later on from Hillbill forcing him to actually take down his master computer and Enkasopa along with it. He is truly one of the only ones to fully lose his country. Most of the plans that the Kings execute come via him, as he has proven himself to be one of the best, if not the best strategist around. Probably my favorite blue in Sentai is Yanma. Now where does Raculus factor into all of this? Man, fuck Raculus. Nah, but for real, I loved hating this guy so much in part 1 of the show that with his return in part 2, it was a nice moment to have, but the character almost fundamentally lost me once he got his redemption arc. Though, I would have preferred that he die in a blaze of glory once he actually got that heel turn at the end with Doug dead. Him sticking around right after the redemption just added issues to the story that just kept being presented. If they had their plan from the start with episode 49 of having all the dead folks just come back, then Raculus could have perished and just came back and had his moment during that episode. It would have been fundamentally better than kind of the bit of a character assassination that we had with Raculus during the latter part of his redemption. Sure, it got better, but it's never as good as it once was. Originally, I was optimistic that with the 2-part breakup for the series, that the show would not suffer from the writing fatigue that we've come so familiarized with, in which they would blow their load in the first half, leaving not much in the second half. And from the toy and marketing perspective, the show did exactly that. And I do plan on doing a video in the future that would discuss the topic of if these episodes, or rather these shows, should go to a smaller episode count in order to avoid the writing issues that just keep popping up. Now, where this series ranks for me, I would say that it's probably in my top 10, but not my top 5. But I haven't really thought of my full rankings for shows, as I gotta sit through a lot of that pile, and a lot of these shows I'd only seen the one time. I know that there's some folks that are gonna end up taking my tone and say that I'm just being overtly negative on this show, but it's not the case. This show is far from being bad, and it's not like it's not a good show. It is definitely a good show. I just wish that the second half had lived up to the hype. So we'll just have to see how things go from here, as there is post-show content that is going to be happening in the near future. We have crossovers to go through and a director's cut of a film version of the last 3 episodes. So they can truly end up fleshing out these bits and pieces and giving us what we so wanted with these episodes. However, they have not laid down a date for this happening, so we just have to be on the lookout for when that announcement is finally made available. Hopefully it's not strictly a theatrical cut and we're stuck waiting a long time for it. But that's it, y'all. Another year of Sentai gone. So with that, let's take a quick look at some of the good times had. Miraculous is a dick.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
I love the young people. So let's get the party started.
Introducing Hime no No. Hey, can't do that. What? On to I'm early. I'm early by like 4 months. What? While this is happening, simultaneously Himeno, Yanma, and Sellout ambush Rita with a plan.
Little guy, big fight commentary from there.
No, Jeremy pulls out his third leg. Plus 7 more. Oh, hey, what's up? I don't want no trouble. I just want to live. Can't have you living. How about you take that scene with Sebastian and you stick Psycho Kaiser in there? No one likes you. We ran polls. You might as well just exit for the rest of the season. Look, I know what y'all are thinking. Why you gotta do mans like that? No one likes Hibiki. And with that, out.
You too, huh?
The hell are you? Happy birthday. Boy! Fear and pain! Y'all out here taking my setup? Not explaining. CG5! Let's go! YouTube copyright claims checks, here we come!
Banger gong, we are on.
What's that? I love Mofu. I crossed the border illegally. Which one? All of them. Hold on there, because this is really catfish. Lightbeat, why do you look like an Italian swinger that just did some bad blow?
Do we have a problem, John?
Wait, what? Wait! I do remember you!
Zio-san,
Yeah, yes.
it appears that Kageragi-san has already won.
Oh,
You can actually pinpoint the second when his heart rips in half. And now.
僕の名前はモハン。
so I figured you had a vacancy and intro! What the hell was that? I kinda deleted your intro assets after you did those Revice specials. Wait, hold on. Toei is now stealing my King Dick jokes? Oh my god. Butter to see if the cream came out just right. and it's bad. Absolutely disgusting. It's you, Neil Patrick Harris. Cosmic Style. So, with that said, those are my thoughts. What are yours? How did you feel about this show overall? What's your rankings on the characters? And what would you say are some missed opportunities or something that you would have liked to see? With that being said, I thank you all for a year of watching this content once again. I didn't know I would be here 2 years ago when I pretty much started doing these types of reviews, but hey, we're here and we're about to keep on going with the next one. With that being said, I am Zio Agito here with another full year of Sentai reviews in the books, and we take off to another one. See you next boom.